I remember that night like it still stuck to my skin. The air inside the Walmart felt heavier than usual, like the whole building was holding its breath. I was pushing a cart down the cleaning supplies aisle, one of the quieter spots near the back, and for some reason every sound felt too sharp. The wheels of the cart squeaked in this slow, nervous rhythm, and each time it echoed, I felt this small jolt in my chest. It was late, close to closing, but not late enough that the place should have felt that empty. There were still a few workers around, a few customers wandering, but it felt like everyone was keeping their distance from each other, like we were all pretending not to see something we didn't want to deal with. I kept getting this strange feeling that someone was behind me. Not right up close, just lingering, like a presence that stayed a few steps back every time I turned. I told myself I was being dramatic, tired, whatever, but the feeling wouldn't go away. It clung to the edges of my thoughts, tugging at me every time I tried to shake it off. I glanced around a few times, just quick looks over my shoulder. The aisle was empty each time. The only movement came from this tall stack of mops that were leaning against a display. One of them shifted slightly, but it could have been nothing. Still, something about this quiet, controlled space felt wrong, like someone was hiding their breathing. I pushed the cart a little faster, hoping to get out into the main walkway where there was at least some noise. But that feeling followed me. Not louder, not closer, just steady. Watching, tracking my steps. And the worst part was how familiar it felt, like I had felt eyes on me earlier that day, and all I had done was ignore it. I tried brushing off that feeling by joining the handful of customers in the main walkway, hoping the noise would settle my nerves. But even out there, something was wrong. People weren't acting normal. A woman near the pharmacy kept looking down at her phone, then glancing up at me like she was checking if I was still there. A teenage employee stocking shelves wouldn't look me in the eye, even when I asked him where the batteries were. He just pointed in a vague direction and stepped back like he didn't want to be anywhere near me. My chest felt tight, like I had missed a warning somewhere earlier in the day, and now it was too late to fix it. I tried making myself focus, grab what I came for and leave. Simple. But every aisle I went into felt like a trap. I'd hear footsteps behind me, soft ones, the kind someone makes when they're not sure if they want to be heard or not. Every time I turned, no one was there. Near the electronics section, I saw something that made my stomach twist. One of the display phones lit up on its own. The screen wasn't on the home page, it was on the camera. My camera. A live view pointed straight at me. Someone was controlling it from somewhere else in the store, zooming in and out like they were deciding how close they wanted to get. When I stepped back, the camera followed. Smooth, slow, confident. I put the phone down and walked away fast, pretending I didn't see it. My hands were shaking. It felt stupid to be scared in a place as normal as Walmart, but something in the air felt wrong in a way I couldn't name. I went towards self-checkout, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But as I passed the employees' only door near the back, I saw it shift open a few inches, then stop. No one came out. No one looked through. It just opened, like someone wanted me to notice, but didn't want to be seen. I sped up. My vision went narrow, like everything except the path in front of me had gone blurry. Then I heard my name. Not loud, not shouted, just a soft, familiar voice right behind me, close enough that I felt warmth graze my ear. When I turned around, the aisle was empty again. But I knew the voice. I hadn't heard it in months, and there was no reason on earth it should have been inside that store. The moment I heard that voice, something inside me cracked open. It wasn't just memory. It was the exact tone, the exact softness he used when he wanted me to turn around without thinking. My ex. The one who used to show up to places he knew I'd be. The one who texted me from unknown numbers long after I blocked him. The one who finally stopped after my brother threatened to get the police involved. My throat went dry. I scanned every aisle around me, trying to convince myself it was just my mind replaying old ghosts. But then I saw it. At the far end of the toy section, a figure standing half hidden behind a rack of bike helmets. Not enough to see his face, but enough to see the outline of the black jacket he used to wear everywhere. The same one I remember grabbing when I pushed him out of my apartment months ago. He didn't move. He didn't come toward me. He just waited, like he wanted to see how long it took for fear to sink in. I backed away, pushing my cart in front of me, even though it felt useless. When he stepped out a little more, I felt everything inside me drop. His head tilted the way it always did when he was sizing someone up, when he wanted control, and then his hand lifted, barely, just enough to show me he was holding my phone. My actual phone. My heart hammered so hard I felt it in my teeth. I grabbed my pocket just to make sure, and it was empty. That was the moment everything spiraled. I must have dropped it earlier, maybe in the cleaning aisle, and he found it. He had been following me the whole time, watching where I went, listening to me breathe, tracking every step just like before. I tried to shout for help, but it came out thin and broken. He walked toward me slow, casual, like he knew no one would step in. And no one did. Not a single worker looked up. Not a single customer turned around. It was like the entire store had silently agreed to pretend nothing was happening. I didn't wait to see what he planned to do with my phone. The second he stepped into the open, I shoved the cart straight at him and ran. I didn't look back to see if it hit him or if he dodged it. My body moved on instinct, every nerve screaming at me to get out. I sprinted past the empty checkout lanes and practically crashed into the sliding doors. They opened too slowly, like they were fighting against me, like they didn't even want to let me go. The cold air outside slapped me hard, but it didn't calm me. I stumbled into the parking lot, scanning between cars, terrified he was already behind me. I didn't see him. I didn't see anyone. It was like he had melted into the store the second I escaped. I dialed the police with shaking hands, giving them half-formed sentences and the description of the jacket because I couldn't force myself to say his name out loud. They searched the store. They didn't find him. They didn't find my phone either. The manager told me the cameras in the back aisles weren't working that night. He said it so casually that I wanted to scream. For hours after, I sat in my locked car with the headlights on, afraid to move, afraid to breathe too loud. Every shadow felt like it could shift into him. Every passing person looked too closely at my face. And even though the police opened a report, it didn't feel like anything had really changed. He was still out there. He still had my phone, my messages, my photos, my location history. My life in his hands again. And somehow, the worst part wasn't what he did. It was knowing how easily he slipped back into my world without anyone noticing. For weeks after that night, I kept waiting for something to feel normal again. I told myself he probably just wanted to scare me, that maybe he'd toss my phone somewhere and move on. But every time a notification popped up on my replacement phone, an email, a random number, even a weather alert, I felt my stomach twist like it was him reaching through the screen. I changed my passwords. I stopped going out alone. I even switched the routes I took to work, just in case he'd memorized my patterns the way he used to. But the fear didn't fade. It just settled deeper, like it found a permanent place in my life. The police followed up once. They asked if I had remembered anything new, like maybe I had imagined the whole thing out of stress. I didn't have the energy to argue. You start to feel small when the things that terrify you sound unlikely to everyone else. Sometimes late at night, I catch myself checking the corners of rooms, like I expect him to be standing there the way he stood between those aisles. Half-hidden, patient, familiar. I think that's what hurts the most. How easy it was for him to slip into a place that's supposed to feel safe. How no one questioned him. How no one questioned anything. I still don't know how long he followed me that night, or how he managed to take my phone without me noticing. Sometimes I wonder if he ever really left the store at all, or if he just stayed inside, watching someone else the same way he watched me. What scares me the most isn't the idea of him coming back. It's knowing he didn't need to touch me to break me all over again. He just had to remind me how little control I ever had. I remember the first time I felt something was wrong that night. It wasn't a sound or a shadow, just this strange heaviness in the air, like someone had turned the whole store into a place where you weren't supposed to breathe too deeply. I was working the closing shift, straightening the clothing racks near the fitting rooms. It was boring, routine stuff, the kind of work where your mind drifts without permission. But every time I reached for a hanger, I felt this quiet pressure behind me, like someone was standing just close enough to invade my space without actually touching me. The fitting room hallway was empty. Completely empty. The lights buzzed softly, the way they always did around that time, flickering just enough to make you blink harder than usual. I told myself it was nothing. I'd been tired for days, and the store had been short-staffed. But the feeling wouldn't leave. It crawled along my skin, subtle but steady, as if someone was watching me from behind the half-open dressing room door at the end of the hall. That door was bothering me. We usually kept all of them open after 10 p.m., but that one was just barely ajar, about an inch. Not enough to see inside, not enough to ignore. I walked toward it slowly, pushing a stray hanger back onto a rack just to look occupied. As I got closer, the air grew warmer, almost like someone had been breathing in that tiny space for too long. I paused right in front of the door, listening. Nothing. Total silence. but I couldn't shake the image of a face pressed close to the gap, waiting for the perfect moment to move. My chest tightened, and for a second I thought about calling for another employee. But the store was too quiet, too still. It felt like if I spoke, I might wake something that had been waiting for me all night. I pushed the fitting room door open with 2 fingers, bracing myself for someone to be inside, maybe hiding, maybe messing around. But the room was empty. Clean. Too clean. The plastic seat was spotless, the mirror had no smudges, and the floor looked like someone had wiped it down minutes before. There wasn't even a single discarded tag or hanger on the bench, which never happened at closing. It felt staged, like someone wanted me to think everything was normal. I stepped back into the hallway, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The fitting room log sheet, the one we used to count how many items went in and out, was missing. I had clipped it onto the wall an hour earlier. Now the hook was bare. No paper. No pen. I scanned the floor, thinking it fell, but it wasn't there either. Before I could process it, the store intercom crackled. Not an announcement, just this faint, dragging sound, like someone breathing into the microphone but trying not to. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, then cut off. I stood frozen with a shirt draped over my arm, listening to the ceiling speakers like they were about to whisper something meant only for me. That's when Carrie from the front end walked by, pushing a cart of returns. She didn't even look at me at first, just kept her eyes straight ahead, jaw tight. When she finally glanced over, she hesitated like she wanted to say something, but changed her mind. "You okay back here?" she asked, but her voice sounded forced, like she already knew the answer. "Did you hear that on the intercom?" I asked. Her eyes moved toward the speaker above us. Yeah, probably someone messing with the system. But she didn't believe that. I could tell by how quickly she hurried off, leaving her cart half parked by the jewelry counter. A few minutes later, I heard a soft click behind me. I turned, expecting to see a customer, but instead one of the other fitting room doors, one I had opened earlier, was now closed. Completely shut. I reached for the handle slowly. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might hear it echo. When I pulled the door open, there was nothing inside again. No person. No clothes. Just the same eerie, spotless room. But on the bench, lying perfectly centered like someone had placed it there for me to find, was the missing fitting room log sheet. And on the top line, written in thick black ink, was a timestamp from 10 minutes earlier, and a name. My name. For a moment I couldn't move. Seeing my name written there, clean, deliberate, unmistakable, made everything inside me lock up. I looked over my shoulder, half expecting someone to be standing in the doorway watching my reaction. But the hallway was empty. Too empty. The kind of empty that feels planned. My hands were shaking when I picked up the log sheet. The ink wasn't smeared. Whoever wrote it had taken their time, pressing down hard enough that the letters left grooves in the paper. The timestamp was from the exact minute I had been folding shirts by myself. I didn't see anyone near me then. No one had even walked past. A soft rustling sound came from behind the closed curtain of the last fitting room, one I knew for sure had been left open. It wasn't loud. It sounded like someone adjusting their weight or shifting their foot just slightly on the tile. I stepped back, every muscle in my body tightening. I wanted to call out, but the words clogged up in my throat. The curtain moved. Barely, just the smallest sway, like someone had brushed their hand against it. I froze, staring at the bottom edge to see if any feet were visible underneath. Nothing. Just a dark, silent space. I backed away slowly, not taking my eyes off it, and reached for my radio. Before I could press the button, it crackled on its own. A voice, low, calm, almost bored, whispered, "You shouldn't be back here alone." My whole body turned cold. It wasn't a voice I recognized. Not a coworker. Not anyone I'd ever heard on the radios before. I dropped the log sheet. It floated to the floor like it wasn't the most terrifying thing in my hands seconds ago. Then the curtain snapped back, not thrown open, just tugged an inch, enough to show a hand gripping the edge from the inside. Pale. Still. Waiting. I didn't wait for the rest of the person to show. I ran. My shoes slipped on the polished floor as I sprinted down the hallway, passing racks and hearing footsteps behind me. Not fast ones, calm, steady steps like the person knew I wouldn't get far, like they had done this before. I burst out into the main walkway, heart slamming, expecting to see people, workers, anyone, but the entire area was empty. No voices, no carts, no movement, just silence, stop running and the footsteps the front doors, fumbling with the panic button on my radio the whole way. My voice came out shaky, almost incoherent, as I shouted into it for anyone to respond. A few minutes later, the night manager appeared from the break room, flashlight in hand, eyes wide. "What happened?" she asked, but I could see the doubt in her expression. The store was empty, too quiet, as if it had swallowed whatever had been stalking me. We searched together. Every fitting room, every aisle, every corner. Nothing. No one. The log sheet was gone from where I had dropped it. The last fitting room remained closed, as if someone, or something, had decided to vanish completely once I tried to expose it. My radio had gone dead, the batteries fully charged just minutes ago. I spent the rest of my shift shaking, glancing over my shoulder at shadows that weren't there. I couldn't bring myself to fold clothes, straighten racks, or touch anything near the fitting rooms. Every sound, the creak of a floor tile, the buzz of the fluorescent lights, felt amplified, threatening. Even after I left, the feeling clung to me. Driving home, every car that followed too closely, every pedestrian on the sidewalk made me flinch. I kept imagining that pale hand, waiting silently, watching from somewhere I couldn't see. And the worst part, I knew that if I went back to work, the same feeling would be waiting. That whoever, or whatever, had been there that night could do it again. And this time, maybe I wouldn't make it out so easily. Even now, weeks later, I can't walk past a fitting room without my stomach twisting. I've thought about quitting, but I can't. Bills, schedules, life. So I go back, forcing myself to clock in, to do the same tasks I've done 100 times. But something has changed. Every door that is slightly ajar, every quiet hallway, every shadow at the edge of my vision reminds me of that night. I still wonder if anyone else saw what happened, the whispered voice, the hand, the log sheet with my name. Or if it was just meant for me, a private warning that someone had been in my space, watching, waiting, testing how far they could push without being noticed. The thought makes my skin crawl even now. Sometimes I catch myself checking the fitting rooms from the far end of an aisle, hesitating before stepping closer. I tell myself it's paranoia, but I know better. The fear isn't just in my head. It's in the way I notice too much, in the way I anticipate movement in empty spaces, in the way I can't sleep without checking that all my doors at home are locked. I don't know who it was, or if they're still coming back, or if they ever really left the store at all. And maybe that's the worst part, the uncertainty. The realization that someone can enter your life silently, manipulate the space around you, and vanish without a trace, leaving nothing but the knowledge that you were being watched. I think about that night constantly, and I don't know if I'll ever feel completely safe again. Because sometimes the people who haunt you don't need to touch you. They only need to prove they can. I remember the way the fluorescent lights flickered that night, casting uneven shadows across the toy aisle. I was stacking shelves, half listening to the security feed on the small monitor near the end of the aisle. Most nights were boring like that, quiet, predictable, nothing worth noticing. But that night felt different. The store smelled sharper, cleaner somehow, like someone had sprayed too much cleaner and left it to linger in the corners. I was on my knees arranging board games when I noticed a movement at the end of the aisle. A cart. Empty. Moving slowly, almost gliding. I froze, thinking it was just the air conditioning or someone pushing it from around the corner. But when I stood up, the cart was still there. Not moving, not abandoned. Just waiting. A knot formed in my stomach. It wasn't just the cart. The aisle felt narrower, tighter, like the shelves were pressing in on me. I glanced around. No other customers, no employees. The sound of my own breathing was loud in the quiet. I wanted to laugh at myself, tell myself I was imagining things, but the hairs on my neck were standing straight up. Then I noticed it, a small, folded piece of paper sitting on the handle of the cart. I didn't put it there. No one was around. My hand started to shake as I picked it up. On it was a single line written neatly in black ink. I see you. I dropped the paper. The cart hadn't moved. The aisle remained silent. But suddenly, I felt eyes on me, from the far end, behind the shelves, from somewhere I couldn't see. And I knew with a cold certainty that whoever, or whatever, had left that note had been following me the entire shift, waiting for the right moment to make their presence known. I backed away from the cart, my breathing uneven, trying to convince myself it was some kind of stupid prank. Maybe a coworker is messing around. Maybe a bored teenager. But the handwriting on the note didn't look rushed or sloppy. It looked careful, intentional, like someone wanting to make sure I understood they meant it. I walked to the end of the aisle, scanning the open floor. The store felt too still, like everything had paused just long enough for me to notice how wrong the silence was. I headed toward the security podium, where one of the small monitors played a looping feed of the live cameras. It usually made me feel safer, but that night, every screen made my stomach twist. On camera 4, the one covering the toy aisle, I saw the empty cart sitting exactly where I had left it. But in the corner of the frame, barely visible near the edge of the shelf, there was a shape. A shoulder. Someone leaning just out of view. I stared at it, waiting for movement, but it stayed perfectly still. I blinked, and when I looked again, the shape was gone. A warm rush of panic went straight through me. I stepped out from behind the podium and looked down the aisle again. Nothing. Just the cart, the shelves, and that feeling pressing against the back of my neck. I took a deep breath, telling myself to finish the shift and get out. Only an hour left. I could handle an hour. But as I walked toward the back to pick up more stock, I saw another cart. This one in the paper goods aisle. Empty. Placed right in the middle, blocking the walkway. A small piece of paper sat on the bottom rack. My heart thudded painfully as I reached for it. I'm closer than you think. My mouth went dry. I looked around again, still no one. The aisles were too quiet. No footsteps. No employees chatting. No customers laughing in the distance. Just the soft hum of the lights above me. I backed up slowly, and that's when I noticed something else. The overhead speaker clicked on like someone had picked up the intercom phone. But no voice followed. Just breathing. Slow. Controlled. Like someone was inches from the microphone, listening to me listen. I stood there frozen, the note in my hand, waiting for words. Waiting for a voice. Instead, the breathing stopped abruptly, replaced by a faint, rhythmic tapping, like someone drumming their fingers on plastic. Then the intercom clicked off. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until my chest started to burn. I shoved the note into my pocket and walked faster, keeping my eyes on every corner. Every aisle felt like it was hiding someone just out of sight, and for the first time since I started working there, I felt like the store didn't want me to leave. Like someone was guiding me deeper inside, pushing me exactly where they wanted me to go. I rounded the corner into the cleaning supplies aisle, and that's when it hit me. The cart from the toy aisle was now there, blocking the path ahead, just a few feet in front of me. Not moved by anyone I could see. Not tipped. Perfectly centered, like a deliberate barricade. My heart started hammering in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears. A sound came from behind me, a soft scraping, like someone dragging their shoe lightly across the floor. I spun around. Nothing. Just shelves, fluorescent light, and the hum of the store. The air felt heavier, hotter, like it was pressing against my skin. I stepped around the cart carefully, trying not to make a sound, and that's when I saw it. Another note, taped to the top shelf at eye level. My hands shook violently as I pulled it down. Written in the same careful, deliberate script. I've been watching you this whole shift. You can't hide. Panic fully set in. I dropped the note, grabbed my radio, and pressed the button, calling for help. My voice was trembling. Manager. Someone's in the store. Static. Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. Then, from the end of the aisle, a shadow moved. Not fast, not running. Just gliding along the edge, staying in the dark, keeping its distance. My stomach lurched. Whoever it was didn't want to be caught. They wanted me to feel it, feel the fear, feel the helplessness. I bolted toward the front, ignoring the cart, ignoring the shadows that seemed to follow at the edge of my vision. The main floor was empty. Completely empty. Not a single employee. Not a single customer. Just the hum of the lights and the echoes of fumbling to unlock them. And then I felt it, a cold draft, like someone brushing past me, just close enough that I knew they'd been there. I slammed the doors open and ran into the parking lot, never looking back. Even after I reached my car, the sound of the dragging footsteps in the aisles stayed with me, etched into my mind. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know what they wanted. But I knew one thing. That night, the store had stopped being safe. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. The fluorescent hum of the store still rang in my ears. I wanted to call the police, but my voice kept catching, like admitting it out loud would make it all more real. Every car that passed in the lot made me flinch. Every shadow from the parking lights looked like it could be him, or whoever had been following me through the aisles. When I finally mustered up the courage to report it, the night manager seemed distracted, like he didn't fully believe me. He said the store cameras didn't pick up anyone in the aisles during my shift. No employees saw anything suspicious. No customers reported anyone behaving oddly. Everything looked normal. I went home shaking, unable to sleep. Every sound outside my apartment made my heart leap. The wind against the windows, the distant rumble of traffic, even the creak of my own floorboards. I kept imagining that shadow, following me silently, watching, knowing I couldn't see it. Even weeks later, the feeling hasn't left. I keep replaying the aisle, the carts, the notes. Every shift, I walk past those same aisles with my eyes darting to the corners, my body tense, bracing for something I can't define. And the worst part is knowing it wasn't a mistake. Whoever was in that store that night didn't just happen to be there. They planned it, they watched, and they made sure I knew I was never truly alone. The store still feels different, like the aisles themselves remember. I've tried to convince myself it was some kind of misunderstanding, stress, exhaustion, an overactive mind, but the truth sits heavier every time I step back into that store. Something happened that night. Something I can't explain, and something no one else seems to care about. I've changed in small, invisible ways. I don't listen to music on my breaks anymore. I need to hear everything around me. I don't stalk the aisles with my back turned. I don't walk into the storage room without propping the door open. People joke that I'm jumpy, but they didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel that cold breath on their neck. Sometimes, when the lights dim before closing, I swear I catch a glimpse of movement at the end of an aisle, a soft shape slipping out of view. I blink, and it's gone. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just the brain trying to fill in blank spaces. But that's what scares me most, that something can hide so perfectly in plain sight. I still think about the handwriting on that piece of paper. How neat it was. How calm. Someone wrote that while standing just a few feet away from me. Someone close enough to touch the cart I was pushing. And every time I remember that, I get this sickening thought. What if they never intended to hurt me? What if the whole point was to show me they could? That they already had? I was in the back stockroom, trying to finish inventory before the night shift ended. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the air smelled faintly of cardboard and bleach. It should have been normal, just another late night counting boxes and scanning barcodes, but something felt off the second I stepped in. The stockroom is usually quiet, but that night it felt alive. Not in a good way. There was a subtle hum, like the building itself was holding its breath. I could hear the faint clatter of boxes shifting somewhere in the corner, though I was alone, or so I thought. I was crouched down near a pallet of paper towels when I noticed one of the boxes had been moved. Not just shifted slightly, moved several feet from where I remembered placing it. My pulse quickened. I straightened up slowly and glanced around. The stockroom was massive, shelves towering over me in rows, creating narrow aisles with sharp shadows. I told myself I must have misplaced it. Maybe a coworker had come in and moved it while I was at the front. But I was sure I was alone. I had checked the doors when I came in. Locked. No sounds from the main store. And then I heard it. A low, deliberate shuffle, like someone walking on tiptoe between the rows of shelves. I froze, my chest tight, straining to hear. The shuffle stopped. Silence. My eyes darted across the aisles, catching shadows that weren't there a second before. I took a step toward the exit, trying to keep calm, telling myself it was probably just a box settling, the building shifting, anything. But as I stepped forward, a small scrap of paper fluttered from the top shelf directly in front of me. I caught it in my hand and saw the words written in black ink. "Don't leave yet." And in that moment, I realized I wasn't alone. I stood frozen, clutching the scrap of paper, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break my ribs. The stockroom was still, but the shadows between the shelves seemed deeper, sharper, like they were swallowing the light. I couldn't see anyone. Not a coworker, not a customer, not even a movement that could explain the note. I tried to shake it off. Maybe someone had slipped in while I wasn't looking. Maybe it was some dumb prank. But the handwriting was deliberate, calm, controlled. Whoever wrote it knew exactly where I would find it. I moved toward the exit slowly, every footstep echoing through the narrow aisles. That's when I heard it, a quiet scrape from the far corner. A soft sound, deliberate, like someone dragging a box across the floor. My pulse spiked. I stopped, holding my breath, trying to listen. Then I saw it. A shadow flickered at the end of the aisle, low to the ground, just barely visible behind a stack of empty cardboard boxes. I squinted, my stomach twisting. The shadow didn't move fast. It just shifted, inch by inch, as if testing me. I backed up toward the pallets, my hands shaking, unsure whether to call for help or try to leave silently. That's when I noticed more scraps of paper scattered on the floor, each with a word or phrase. "I'm here. Keep watching. Don't try to run." My chest tightened. Someone had been following me all night, leaving these messages, moving through the stockroom unseen. I grabbed a box near me and held it like a weapon, my eyes scanning every dark corner. My mind raced. There was only one exit, and I had to pass the shadow to get there. My hands were trembling so badly that I dropped the box, and it clattered to the floor. The shadow moved closer. Not quickly, just slowly, deliberately, keeping its distance while closing the gap. I could feel it, like it was aware of my every movement, reading my fear, waiting to see how far I'd go before I broke completely. I forced myself to take a step forward, then another. My eyes never left the shadow, which seemed to glide over the tiles rather than walk. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but the note had been clear. Someone wanted me here. They were playing with me, and I had no idea how far this would go, or if I would make it out. I don't remember making the choice to run. My legs just moved on their own, pushing me down the aisle toward the exit door. The wheels of a loose cart screeched as I shoved past it, the sound echoing through the entire stockroom. As soon as it rang out, I heard footsteps, fast, sharp, closing in behind me. There was no more pretending. Someone was back there. Someone who had been watching me the whole time. I reached the door and grabbed the handle, but it didn't budge. It was locked from the outside. I yanked it harder, panic tearing through me as the footsteps grew louder. I slammed my shoulder against it, the metal rattling, but not giving way. Behind me, something scraped across the concrete. A long, slow drag that didn't sound like walking anymore. It sounded like someone wanted me to hear them, wanted me to know how close they were. My throat tightened. I turned around slowly, my hands shaking so violently I could barely keep my balance. At the far end of the room, between the tall shelves, someone was standing. Just a shape at first, tall, motionless, head tilted slightly like they were studying me. My breath hitched. The figure stepped forward, just enough for the light to catch the outline of their jacket, their hands, the dark smudges on their clothes that looked almost like grease or dirt. There was nothing on their face, not anger, not excitement, just this empty stare that made my stomach drop. I grabbed a metal rod leaning against the wall and held it out in front of me. My hands were slick with sweat. "Stay back," I whispered, though my voice sounded thin and useless. The figure didn't listen. They moved slowly at first, then faster, closing the distance in long, deliberate strides. I swung the rod as hard as I could when they got close, the metal clashing against their arm with a dull, sickening thud. They stumbled, and I bolted past them, not looking back. All I remember is the sound of them breathing, heavy, angry, right behind me as I ran deeper into the maze of shelves, hoping I could lose them before they decided they were done playing. I ran blindly through the stockroom, the fluorescent lights flickering above me, each shadow twisting into something that looked alive. My chest burned, my legs screamed, but I couldn't stop. Every turn, every corner felt like it could hide that shape, that presence that had been stalking me the entire night. I finally saw the back door, the one that led to the loading dock. I lunged for it, yanking it open with all my strength, and stepped out into the cool night air. The sounds of the parking lot hit me like a wave, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional car door slamming. But there was no one there. No one is following me. I didn't look back. When the manager finally came down a few minutes later, I could barely speak. I tried to explain what happened, the notes, the shadow, the feeling of being hunted, but he shook his head, muttering something about tired employees seeing things that weren't there. The next few days, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in my apartment, every whisper of wind against the windows, made my stomach twist. I replayed the stockroom over and over, trying to rationalize it, but I couldn't. Whoever, or whatever, had been there that night, had past a stockroom, a loading dock, or even just a narrow aisle. I feel it. The pressure of being watched, the certainty that someone is following, waiting, studying. And I know deep down that night didn't end. It just paused until the next time. I don't know if I'll ever step back into that stockroom without fear, or if that presence will always be there, just out of sight, reminding me how vulnerable I really am. Sometimes I sit in my car after work and stare at the back entrance of the store, wondering if the person who hunted me that night is still inside. Maybe they were employees. Maybe a stranger who slipped in through the loading dock. Maybe someone who had been hiding in that building long before my shift even started. I'll never know, because no one bothered to check. No cameras were reviewed. No reports were filed. It was treated like nothing. Like I imagined all of it. But my body remembers. My mind remembers. The locked door, the notes, the footsteps. Those things don't come from imagination. They come from someone who had a plan. Someone who wanted me alone. Someone who was patient enough to wait until I let my guard down. What scares me the most isn't that they managed to get that close to me. It's that they let me go. They could have done whatever they wanted. I was cornered, panicked, completely helpless. They knew that, and they still let me slip past them. And I keep wondering why. What were they waiting for? What stopped them? Late at night, when I wake up sweating from the same nightmare, I get this feeling in my chest, a heavy certainty I can't shake. That night in the stockroom wasn't a mistake or a random scare. It was a warning, not a message they wanted to deliver. A message they wanted me to live with. And I do. Every single day. I was working the early morning shift, the kind where the store is open but barely awake. The aisles were dim, half the registers were still shut down, and the only sounds were the steady hum of the freezers and the occasional squeak from a distant cart. It felt like a limbo hour, too early to feel alive, too quiet to feel safe. I was assigned to clean up an aisle near the electronics section. Nothing unusual, some spilled cereal, a few boxes knocked over, the usual mess. But when I got there, the first thing I noticed was a phone lying on the floor. Not cracked, not old, new. Perfect condition, like someone had set it there intentionally. I picked it up, expecting it to be locked, but the screen lit up instantly. A video was already open. The thumbnail showed a blurry shot of a Walmart aisle. At first, I thought it was just a recording from a customer or a kid messing around. But when I tapped play, my stomach turned. The video wasn't of some random aisle. It was me. I stood frozen as the shaky footage followed me the night before, walking to the break room, scanning shelves, talking to a coworker. All from angles I didn't recognize. Some were from low shelves, others from behind displays, like someone had been hidden, watching me silently through gaps in the store. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Whoever filmed it hadn't just been close, they'd been following me for days, maybe longer. I looked around the aisle, suddenly aware of how quiet it was, how empty, how exposed I felt, and then the phone buzzed in my hand. A new notification popped up across the screen. Turn around. My breath caught in my throat. The store was silent, too silent, and I knew, without even looking, that someone was right behind me. I didn't dare turn around at first. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but the aisle was narrow, and the store was quiet enough that anyone, or anything, could have closed the distance before I even made it 2 steps. I swallowed hard and forced myself to glance at the shelves on either side. Empty. Just products neatly stacked. But my stomach twisted. I knew I wasn't alone. Whoever had filmed me before was still here. Watching. Waiting. A soft, deliberate shuffle echoed from the end of the aisle behind me. Just enough to make me jump. My pulse was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I tried to tell myself it was another employee, maybe stocking something. But no one else was scheduled this early. The phone buzzed again. Another message. Don't drop it. My mind raced. Who was doing this? How had they gotten so close to me? How long had they been watching? I pressed the screen, scrolling through the video. More clips, all of me. Walking down the aisles, stocking shelves, talking quietly to customers. One clip showed me bending to pick up a box. Right at that moment, I felt a shadow brush past my shoulder. I whipped around, heart slamming, but the aisle was still empty. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. And yet, I could feel it. That pressure behind me, the awareness that I was being studied. I backed up slowly, pressing myself against the shelves, eyes darting to every corner. Another notification appeared on the phone. I'm closer than you think. The words were calm, precise, terrifying. Whoever was doing this knew my every move, every habit, every step I took in that store. And I was alone, completely alone. I considered running, but something stopped me. The phone was vibrating violently now, the screen lighting up like a warning. My mind told me to leave, to throw the phone and sprint out, but my body froze. Because deep down, I knew whoever left that phone wasn't going to let me just walk away. Then I heard it, a low, soft breathing from behind the next aisle. Not hurried, not panicked, just deliberate. Waiting, watching, patient. I realized then that the game had already begun. The breathing grew louder, slow and steady, like whoever was making it wanted me to hear every inhale. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. I couldn't see anyone, but the sound was too close, just one aisle over, maybe only a few feet away. I stepped backward, keeping my eyes locked on the end of the aisle. My heartbeat was so loud it felt like it filled the entire store. Then the phone buzzed again. Hard. Repeatedly, a flood of notifications popped across the screen, one after another, each one the same message. Don't run, don't run, don't run. The repeated warnings made my chest tighten. I didn't know whether to listen or to bolt, but I couldn't think anymore. Panic took over. I turned and sprinted down the aisle. As soon as I moved someone moved too. Fast. The footsteps slammed against the floor, sharp and heavy. They weren't sneaking anymore. They were chasing, coming straight for me. I shot past displays, knocking boxes off shelves, every muscle in my body burning. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel them right behind me, close enough to grab me if I slowed down even a second. I reached the end of the aisle and tried to cut toward the front of the store, but my foot slipped on something, a plastic wrapper, or maybe something someone dropped earlier. I hit the ground hard, the phone skidding out of my hand and spinning across the floor. My ears rang. For a split second, everything went still. Then I heard footsteps slowing to a stop behind me. Careful, controlled,
Only a few feet
like
away.
they were choosing the screen cracked but still glowing. A new message popped up, blurry through the shattered glass. Got you. My stomach dropped. I pushed myself up just as a shadow fell across me. Not rushed, not chaotic, just certain, like this person had been waiting for this exact moment. I scrambled to my feet, stumbled forward, and ran again. Not because I thought I could outrun whoever was behind me, but because stopping meant letting them touch me. And I couldn't live with what might happen if they did. I don't remember how I made it to the front of the store. My legs carried me on pure instinct, slipping on the polished floor, crashing into displays, my lungs burning like I'd swallowed fire. All I knew was that I needed distance, any distance between me and the footsteps behind me. By the time I reached the registers, the store looked different. Brighter, too open, too exposed. I could see everything, but somehow that made me feel worse, like I had nowhere left to hide. I stumbled toward the front doors, shoving them open with both hands, and nearly fell into the cold morning air outside. When I finally glanced back, the automatic doors slid shut behind me. I waited for someone to follow, for a shadow to appear, for that slow, steady breathing to fill the space again. But nothing happened. No one came out. No one even approached the doors. I collapsed against the row of carts, shaking so hard I could barely stay upright. A few minutes later, one of the managers arrived, confused and annoyed, asking why I looked like I'd run a marathon. I tried to explain, but the words came out broken, messy. He kept asking where the threat was, who chased me, what they looked like. I didn't have an answer, because I never saw their face, not once. All I had was that phone, except when we went back inside to find it, it was gone. Completely gone. Like it had never been there at all. And that scared me more than anything else. Even now, weeks later, I can't think about the electronics aisle without a knot forming in my stomach. I replay the footage in my head constantly, the shaky camera angles, the way the shadow moved, the way the phone buzzed with warnings just as I felt someone behind me. I keep asking myself how someone could get so close without me noticing, how they knew my routine, my exact path through the store, the times I paused, the moments I let my guard down. And the worst part, they never wanted to be seen. Not until that final moment when I stumbled. Not until they had complete control over my fear. I've started noticing little things now. Carts slightly moved, notes left where they shouldn't be, footsteps in empty aisles that stop when I look. I try to tell myself it's paranoia, but I know better. My mind doesn't invent this kind of precision. Sometimes I wonder if they're still watching, still waiting for the right moment to remind me that the store isn't as safe as it seems. I tell myself I survived, but the truth is survival doesn't erase the knowing, the certainty that someone could step out from the shadows at any second. And so I walk through the aisles differently now. I don't trust the cameras, I don't trust the lights, I don't trust the space around me. Because one night, someone showed me exactly how alone you can be in a place where thousands of people walk every day. And I will never forget it. I didn't think much about the overnight shifts at first. They were quiet, peaceful even. Just me, a few stalkers, and the endless rows of shelves waiting to be filled. But after a while, the silence started to feel wrong, like the building itself was holding its breath. The cameras in the back hallway were the first thing that made me uneasy. Half of them were always offline, blinking red like tired eyes struggling to stay awake. Management brushed it off every time, saying the wiring was old, that we just needed to work around it. But it meant there were blind spots everywhere, corners that didn't really exist on the store map. One night, I was assigned to clean up the seasonal aisle. It was near the back of the store, far from the registers, tucked in a spot where no customers wandered this late. The lights flickered there sometimes, buzzing softly overhead like they were trying to whisper something. While I was sweeping, I noticed a shopping cart parked at the end of the aisle. Nothing strange, except it wasn't there a few minutes earlier. And it wasn't empty either. A jacket lay inside, folded neatly. A men's jacket. Heavy, dark, and worn at the sleeves. What bothered me wasn't the jacket itself. It was how warm it felt when I touched it. Like someone had just taken it off. I stepped back, scanning the aisle, but no one was there. The store was dead quiet except for the faint hum of the vents. I checked around the corner. Nothing. Checked the next aisle. Nothing. But when I came back, the position of the cart had changed. Just slightly. Tilted toward me now. Like someone had nudged it. Like someone wanted me to notice. My stomach tightened, and for the first time that night, the silence didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt watched. I froze in place, staring at the cart, my hands gripping the broom like it was a lifeline. The jacket inside hadn't moved again, but the slight tilt made my stomach churn. Someone had been here, and they hadn't left. I could feel it. I took a cautious step forward, trying to convince myself it was just a co-worker messing around. Maybe someone had come by while I was sweeping, and left the jacket for some dumb joke. But no one else was scheduled that late. And the store was dead quiet. No footsteps, no voices, nothing to explain what had just happened. Then I heard it. A soft shuffle from behind the seasonal displays. Not fast, not loud, just deliberate. My heart rate spiked. I leaned closer, trying to peer around the shelves, but it was too dark. The flickering lights did nothing to illuminate the corners, and I couldn't see beyond the edge of the aisle. I backed up slowly, trying to put distance between myself and whatever or whoever was there. The cart had shifted again, just a fraction, like a slow, mocking gesture. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I fumbled it out and unlocked the screen. A message had appeared in the Notes app. No number. No sender. Just words. You shouldn't be here alone. My stomach dropped. I wanted to run, but the exit was still 20 feet away, around a corner, past the blind spots I knew existed in the camera coverage. Whoever this was knew the store, knew the blind spots, knew me. The lights flickered harder, plunging the aisle into near darkness. I heard the shuffle again, closer now. My ears rang. I could feel the presence pressing down on me from all sides. I made a decision. I had to keep moving. I sprinted toward the main aisle, heart pounding, slipping past displays, trying to stay in the lighted areas. Behind me the shuffle followed, soft, careful, never breaking pace, always closing in. I glanced over my shoulder and saw nothing. No figure, no shadow. Just the empty aisle. But the jacket was gone. The cart was gone. And I knew, without a doubt, that whoever had left it there wasn't finished with me. Every instinct screamed at me to run faster. But I also knew that no matter how far I went, the blind corners, the flickering lights, the empty spaces, they were still theirs. They'd been waiting, watching, and now I had walked right into it. I rounded the corner toward the main aisle, lungs burning, heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. I could hear it behind me now, a soft, deliberate shuffle, following my every step. Whoever it was wasn't rushing. They didn't need to. I was running exactly where they wanted me. I reached the end of the aisle and skidded to a stop. The automatic doors to the front of the store were still locked for the night. I pounded on them, shouting for someone, anyone, but the only response was the low hum of the fluorescent lights and that steady shuffle from behind. I swung my head around, desperate to catch a glimpse, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadow move along the far aisle. Just a blur. Not quite human, not quite still. My stomach knotted. Then I saw something even worse, a second cart, identical to the first, now positioned in the middle of the aisle. Empty. Or at least it looked empty. But the movement was subtle, almost imperceptible, like someone crouched inside, waiting for me to notice. I screamed and ran toward the storage hallway, hoping to reach the manager's office. My foot caught on a loose box, and I fell hard, scraping my knees. Pain shot through me, but I couldn't stop. I scrambled up, grabbed a metal rod leaning against the shelves, and swung it blindly behind me. The shuffle stopped. Silence. Just a long, heavy breath somewhere in the shadows. I bolted for the back exit, the fear making my vision tunnel. The door was finally unlocked, and I threw it open, spilling into the cool night air. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. Even then, parked under the dim lot lights, I felt it, the eyes, the weight of someone observing, waiting, ensuring I remembered. The store behind me looked ordinary, calm, like nothing had happened. But I knew better. Someone had been there. Someone had planned every second. And I had no idea if they were still inside, into the driver's seat, or if this was just hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. My chest heaved, my legs trembling like I'd run a marathon. The night air was cold, but it did nothing to calm the heat of fear that still coursed through me. I tried to tell myself it was over, that whoever had been in that store had gone, that I was safe now. But the memory of the shuffle, the carts, the jacket, everything was etched into my mind. Every aisle, every corner of that store suddenly felt like a trap. When the morning manager arrived a few minutes later, I could barely speak. I told him about the carts, the jacket, the notes, the sense of being followed. He frowned, skeptical, muttering something about my imagination, about stress and long shifts. He even offered to check the cameras, but when he did, nothing appeared. No carts moving, no shadows, no one in the aisles that night. I didn't argue. I just nodded, knowing he couldn't see what I had felt. The presence, the watching, the patient stalking, it wasn't on any camera. It wasn't documented, but it was real, and it was mine to carry. Even days later, when I'm back in the store during daylight, I feel the weight of it. Every aisle seems longer. Every corner seems darker. And the knowledge that someone could be waiting there, silently, reminds me that the store has layers of unseen danger that no one else notices. Some nights, I still lie awake thinking about it, feeling that slow shuffle in my ears, the certainty that the person who haunted that aisle hasn't forgotten me. And I know they never will. I've been trying to make sense of that night, but the more time passes, the more it feels like something I was never meant to understand. I used to think of that store as just a building, bright lights, cheap shelves, predictable routines. Now it feels like a place with a pulse, a place that can hide things, a place that can swallow someone whole without leaving a trace. What gets me the most is how quiet the danger was. No screaming, no footsteps running toward me, no dramatic confrontation. Just a slow shuffle. A jacket. A trail of carts. Little signs that someone was nearby, watching, waiting. Someone who slipped between aisles like smoke, staying just out of view. Someone who knew exactly how to get close without ever being seen. I keep replaying the moment I saw that figure slip out through the emergency exit. I didn't see their face, but something about that calm, almost casual walk haunts me. Like they weren't escaping. Like they were done. Finished. Moving on to something or someone else. Sometimes I wonder why they didn't come after me. Why did they stop? Why did they leave? That's the part that keeps me awake some nights. The feeling that maybe it wasn't mercy. Maybe it was a choice. Intention. Maybe they just wanted me to know they were there. Maybe the point wasn't to hurt me, but to let me live with the memory. And I do. Every single day.